I never imagined that my own family, the very people who were supposed to love and protect me, would become the villains in my story. But sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those closest to you, the ones you'd take a bullet for. And when it happens, the pain cuts deeper than anything you could prepare for. Growing up, I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my younger brother, Daniel. He was charming, funny, and had this way of making everyone love him instantly. My parents adored him. My relatives spoiled him. And even teachers bent over backward to excuse his mistakes. Me, I was the quiet one, the hardworking one, the one who did everything right, only to be overshadowed. For years, I swallowed it. I kept my head down, studied hard, got good grades, and worked part-time jobs to support myself through college. When I finally graduated with a business degree, I thought, finally, this is my moment. I wanted to build something of my own, something my family could be proud of. So I poured my energy into starting a small logistics company. I worked insane hours, slept in my office some nights, and ate instant noodles to save every dime. Slowly, painfully, my company grew. Within 5 years, I had contracts with several major retailers, a fleet of delivery trucks, and a loyal team that trusted me. For the first time in my life, I felt proud. And then came Daniel. He had never been interested in hard work. He hopped from one job to another, leaving behind a trail of broken promises. But when he saw me succeeding, suddenly he wanted in. "Come on, bro," he said one evening at our parents' house. "We're family. Let me join your company. You know I'd be great at sales. We could take this thing to the next level." My gut told me no. Daniel was irresponsible, and the last thing I needed was to risk everything I'd built. But then my parents stepped in. "Don't be selfish," my mother said. "He's your brother. You have to take care of him." My father added, "Family means sticking together. What's the point of success if you can't share it with your own blood?" I felt cornered. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I gave Daniel a sales role, with a decent salary and a chance to prove himself. At first it seemed okay. He brought in a few clients, but most of the time he was coasting on my reputation. He'd brag about being a co-founder, even though he hadn't been there from the start. He spent more time at fancy bars than in the office. And then the real betrayal started. One day I discovered that several contracts I had been negotiating mysteriously slipped through my fingers, only for Daniel to swoop in and save the deal. He played the hero, taking credit for work I had been doing for months. My employees started looking at him as the future of the company. Then I found out the truth. Daniel had been secretly undermining me. He'd tell clients I was too busy to handle their accounts, pushing them to deal with him. Instead, he charmed them with his smile and empty promises while making me look incompetent. When I confronted him, he just smirked. "Relax, man. I'm just helping us grow. Don't be so uptight." But it didn't stop there. One morning, I walked into a meeting with my parents, only to find out they had been talking to Daniel behind my back. He had convinced them that I wasn't a good leader, that I was too controlling, and that the company would collapse without his vision. "We think Daniel should take a bigger role," my father said. "Maybe even step in as CEO. You're better with the behind-the-scenes stuff." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own family, my blood, was siding with the brother who had done nothing but take shortcuts. Everything I had built, they were trying to hand over to him on a silver platter. The final straw came when I found out Daniel was trying to legally force me out. He had been working with a shady lawyer, exploiting small mistakes in my early paperwork to argue that he was entitled to half the company. And my parents, they supported him. That night, sitting alone in my office, staring at the walls I had painted myself when this place was just a dream, I broke down. Not because of losing the company, but because I realized something darker. My family had never truly believed in me. I was just the mule, the workhorse to build the foundation so Daniel could shine. But what they didn't know was this. I had been preparing for this moment. Months earlier, I noticed Daniel's behavior and started making quiet moves. I opened a second company under a different name, transferring my best employees and most valuable contracts. Everything looked like it still belonged to the original business. But slowly, I had shifted the heart of the company elsewhere. By the time Daniel and my parents thought they were taking over, all they really had was an empty shell, and I wasn't finished. Because family may cut the deepest, but betrayal awakens something inside you. I wasn't going to cry about what they did to me. No, I was going to make sure they regretted underestimating me for the rest of their lives. When you've been betrayed by your own blood, something inside you hardens. The old version of me, the one who craved my parents' approval, who wanted to believe family meant loyalty, died the night I discovered their plan. What rose from the ashes was someone far colder, sharper, and determined. Daniel thought he had outsmarted me. My parents thought they had finally put their golden boy on the throne. What none of them realized was that I had already moved the throne elsewhere. The first stage of my revenge was simple. Let them win. When Daniel and his lawyer confronted me, demanding I hand over shares, I didn't resist. I signed the paperwork with a calm smile, agreeing to step back while Daniel became CEO. My parents celebrated, toasting him like he was some conquering hero. They thought I was defeated. But in reality, they had just inherited an empty shell. The contracts they thought they controlled had already been reassigned to my second company, the employees Daniel planned to command. Were now working for me under new branding. The trucks he believed belonged to him had been leased out in my new company's name. By the time he sat in the CEO chair, all he had left was a fancy office with no real power. At first, Daniel didn't notice. He strutted around like a king, bragging to clients, buying a brand new sports car, and throwing lavish parties with company funds. But soon the cracks started to show. Contracts were mysteriously canceled. Deliveries failed. Payroll bounced because revenue wasn't coming in. Clients stopped returning calls. Meanwhile, I was silently thriving. My new company, reborn stronger, leaner, and with the best people by my side, was signing deals left and right. The same clients Daniel had tried to steal from me were now laughing behind his back, working exclusively with me instead. The second stage of my revenge was public humiliation. Daniel's downfall wasn't just about business. It was about reputation. He had always relied on charm, on being the golden boy who could talk his way out of anything. But charm doesn't pay bills, and it doesn't cover incompetence. I made sure every failure of his company became visible. When deliveries went missing, I personally ensured angry clients left scathing reviews online. When suppliers pulled out, I let the rumors spread that Daniel was drowning in debt. Investors who once showed interest suddenly backed away. Slowly, the golden boy's shine began to rust. And then came the media hit. A local business magazine, one I had quietly built a relationship with, ran a feature story. From underdog to industry leader, the rise of my new company name. The article detailed my hard work, my vision, and my smart decision to separate from my old company before it collapsed under mismanagement. They didn't name Daniel directly, but anyone who read it knew exactly who they were talking about. My parents called me that night. My mother's voice was sharp, almost panicked. "Why didn't you tell us you started another company? Daniel is struggling and you're thriving." I didn't answer her question. Instead, I said calmly, "Maybe you backed the wrong son." Click, I ended the call. Stage 3 was personal. Daniel wasn't just losing his company. He was losing everything. His fancy car, repossessed within a year. His friends, gone when the money dried up. The lawyer he had hired, sued him for unpaid fees. And my parents, for the first time in their lives, they saw Daniel not as a golden boy, but as a failure. They tried to guilt me into bailing him out, saying family comes first. But I remembered every word. Every time they had told me to step aside, every time they had treated me like the mule while praising him like royalty. So I looked them in the eye and said, "Family only matters when it's loyal. You made your choice. Now live with it." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Daniel eventually filed for bankruptcy. The old company dissolved in shame, leaving nothing but debt and ruined relationships. He tried working for a competitor, but his reputation was destroyed. No one wanted him. As for me, my company flourished. Within 5 years, we were one of the top logistics firms in the region. I had the respect of my employees, the trust of my clients, and the freedom I had always dreamed of. But the sweetest part of my revenge wasn't the money or the success. It was watching Daniel and my parents finally realize the truth. I had never been the weak one. I had never been the shadow. I was the builder, the fighter, the one who turned betrayal into power. And while they sat in their quiet house, full of regret and resentment, I lived my life on my own terms, proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's making sure the people who doubted you know they will never, ever be invited to share it. They wanted to steal my throne, but in the end, I built a kingdom they'll never enter.